Links to my channel here over at SubStars or the various other links. So Disney, so anti-white. What is new? The thing is, there's not a ton of news on things that's coming out right now. There's in terms of movies and games and stuff. There's a lot of news concerning the behind-the-scenes stuff with corporations as they are responding to Trump and the perceived Trump effect, especially with CNN, who's firing like 100 people. Though I gotta admit, like I always assumed that the party out of power, in this case the left-wing media, which is obviously left-wing media, usually the opposite occurs, where a CNN and MSNBC should be doing really good business because the left wing would have something to resist against. But for some reason, something's different this time. And it might just be because Biden was such a disaster that even the left wing doesn't have the energy to be against Trump. This is a really a different term, and I'm not like some in Trump's corner, some kind of Trump fan, but there is a weird kind of vibe shift going on right now. Anyway, so there's this behind the scenes kind of corporate news with companies, and some companies are openly canceling their DEI stuff. Others are not, and some government agencies are just renaming things, which is probably going to end up getting those people fired. But the thing with the private sector is the ones that keep on pushing the woke stuff, the DEI stuff, they're gonna lose out because if what's happening is if people see Target selling gay stuff for kids, well, everyone has a supercomputer in their hands where they can take photos and videos and post it online, post it on Twitter, and the market will decide to shop somewhere else. That's the amazing power of social media. So anyway, when stuff does come out, whether it's movies, games, or any other kind of story, it's mostly crap. And I mean, that's like, it's been crap for 10 years. It's probably going to continue down that pathway. And there might be a Trump effect, but the lead time for movies and games for Hollywood is a year at least. Maybe with streaming shows, lower budget stuff can be a little bit quicker, but it's probably not going to affect Hollywood. I think they're just too. I think this is like a religion. It's like thinking that people would leave their religion behind, and it's like it just doesn't feel like that's going to happen. These people would rather go down with the ship. So anyway, when stuff does come out, the odds. It would be a rarity if something was just kind of flat out good. And I mean, if it happens, let me know. I'd love to see what Hollywood comes out with that people consider kind of neutral. The other thing is, I think people are so ready to accept something that's not woke that they're willing to settle on stuff that is woke, but just not as woke as it used to be. And I hope that doesn't happen, because then that's just like Stockholm syndrome for Hollywood. So Hollywood, I think, is going to wait it out and assume that Gavin Newsom will get in the next term. And before you think that's so politically naive of me, well, just wait for 4 years and see what happens with him. Surely he ruined his career with the management of California. Can I remind you of a little president named Bill Clinton? And you can look at his career before he went into the White House. An openly corrupt president, and for some magic way, he got elected. And if they want Newsom in, or if they at least want him to be the nominee, then that is exactly what will happen. And if you look at him and you compare him to the other people they have a really shallow bench. Anyway, so. Hollywood's probably going to wait for him, and they'll just keep making woke movies because they'll assume that if he gets in office, then the vibe will have shifted again. But the thing is, no matter who is elected, the audience is going to continue to ignore Hollywood. There's a growing amount of alternative competition on all these live streaming platforms, and they're small, but the thing is they all add up. And every minute you're on, Rumble or Odyssey or DLive is a minute you're not watching CNN, which is why they had to fire 100 people. And the reality also is that the left wing doesn't support woke movies and games. The right wing's not expected to support it. It's not for the you chud, Hugo Boss, Nazis, or but it's not for us to watch. But why doesn't the left wing watch it? And until they solve that, they're going to keep losing money. So what's going on here is Disney is hiring and promoting people based in part simply because they're not of European descent, which is the answer to why Disney sucks now. So being black really is a superpower to Disney, but it's a problem because the best people to run Disney would be white Christian family men. And there are two things going on right now. One, not hiring on merit, and two, the lack of social cohesion with the group that you end up forming, and probably just the general anti-white racism throughout Disney and throughout most of these corporations that are in the public eye that create a hostile, toxic work environment. Because how well are the European employees going to function in a toxic anti-white environment where they have some obese DEI person lecture them on their privilege or whatnot? And if you know the company hates you, you're just not gonna you're not gonna care. You're not gonna go above and beyond it. And in fact, if there's ways to hurt the company by passively ignoring things, you're probably gonna let that happen because you know you're not going to get advanced, as O'Keefe Media found out with Disney. And the thing people keep on focusing on is the obvious and true, is that if you don't hire on merit, then of course you don't get the best people. That's like it's so obvious that it just goes over people's heads a little bit, or people don't talk about it. You don't get the best people, and the globalists are terrified of blind hiring or blind tests of any sort where you're just given a number and you're evaluated on your qualifications and merits and whatnot, because they don't want to be treated equally. They want special treatment for not being of European descent, which is the other big question of why exactly is that racism accepted? And to be fair, there are people who are starting to awaken to this quite seriously. So in these woke companies across the board, they're hiring on the metrics that are irrelevant. Their claim is hiring non-whites has value, and the more mixed a group is, the more effective they'll be in their goals, which unfortunately for them has been shown to be untrue in every test for decades. Diversity has always been a weakness, and these are psychological experiments and business studies for 100 years. This has been known, but it's only by gaslighting and repetition of a message that they got people to repeat that asinine statement without thinking about it and asking for evidence, because then suddenly you're the first one to stop clapping and sit down, which means you're probably going to get your neck stretched in Russia and North Korea and Cuba type of situations. So, and that's a real phenomenon too, because they're so terrified to be the first to stop clapping. So in these woke companies, instead of getting one, and then for some of the stuff, it goes on for an obnoxiously long time until the dictator is begging these people to stop clapping. So instead of getting woke companies, instead of getting one, the best people, and two, the people who can work together, you're getting people based on the sexual identity of the weak and the racial identity of mostly not being of European descent. And there's a hierarchy of the darker, the more pigmentation you have, the higher you are on the suppression ladder for some reason. But the critical second part of the social cohesion issue is that you're getting a group of people who have friction between themselves, and some of it is fomented by Disney themselves. And for some reason, this is not politically correct to say, but it's been proven for so long that it's just ridiculous to ignore it. Diversity destroys social cohesion. And I think people empirically have experienced that. And whatever they're working on is not going to be as good if on the alternative, the group had been more closely aligned. And the evidence is the products that Disney is putting out to the market. They hired these blue-haired POC BLTs whose main goal is to push their globalist nonsense worldview. And as a consequence, Disney has had a long history of failure. Disney went from a family-friendly company to just globalist propaganda because it's rotten at the top, and it just from the top controls it all the way down. The people who run it hate the family, Christianity, nationalism, and the European people, and they've slowly transformed the old Disney into this current abomination of mixed race, gay space communism, which was literally a was a movie animation called, I think it was Strange World. So the things Disney are doing are so blatant that people can't see how crazy they are. That's how crazy it is. And when Disney's occasionally asked about it, they just dodge the question. Like, who was that guy? The mayor of London was dodging questions on the current hot topic issue, and he just did it so obviously. It's like, yeah, vote harder next time. But what happened was occasionally at shareholder meetings, when asked about why they're pushing, and I'm curious to see who's going to replace him because he's got to be eager to get out of there. When asked about why they're pushing woke and diversity when clearly it's not finding an audience, they'll explain that they think it makes them stronger, but it clearly doesn't. Their movies are bombing, and they just keep sticking to the story that they value diversity, and in a circular argument conclude with, because diversity is essentially a positive thing, and thus they value it. But they've said a lot without actually proving anything, and in fact the evidence all points to the opposite direction. I mean, that's why this is on the level of a cult, but it's been shown to be a negative thing. It's literally correlated with decreasing sales. So what is it called when people behave based on illogical belief system that's proven to be false? Well, that's a cult, and in this case it's a globalist agenda. And it would be awesome if Disney just kept going in this direction. It'd be better for them to fail than if they dialed things back a little bit to get the gullible audience back on board for a few years who just want to have, something, I was going to almost say DVDs to distract the kids. But like that ship has sailed. That Disney is a very dirty company, as well as all these Cartoon Network and Amazon and Netflix. I mean, they're not. It used to be back in the day, you'd park your kids in front of a Disney VHS tapes or something, and it would be fine. But that's just not coming back. The new Disney is, my mixed race, gay, space communism type of stuff. And the good news is that Disney does not seem to be changing, because in their SEC releases, they're listing someone's skill is in simply not being of European origin, or probably straight as well, which seems to violate the civil rights of the European Americans who are working there, and the only affordable options are going to be a class action. And O'Keefe Media, he was the guy who used to work for, I don't even remember the name of the old company he worked for. He left them because he was going over, I guess he was getting close to target and catching some anti-aircraft fire. So they fired him, and their website just started collapsing, and their numbers started collapsing, and now he's got like 3 million followers on Twitter. So he's done some hidden camera videos on Disney where the guy admitted that it was all. He said that interview is on Twitter. I can upload it to the alt platforms. There's some spicy things said in that interview. It's not really for YouTube, but he said one of the things he said that it's almost impossible for a male of European descent to advance to the inner circle, and then you couple that with giving people bonuses based on not being European. It's like, well, that's just obvious anti-white discrimination. It almost seems like you're laundering money or giving these people bribes, and they'll give you kickbacks where you're paying somebody extra simply because they're not white. It's crazy. And like the shareholders would have a reason to complain, a breach of fiduciary duty. And maybe under Trump, the government will go after them. Who knows? Because under Trump, their plate is pretty full as is, because he's kind of come out of the gate with his fingers in a lot of different pies. So I don't know how long you can keep up that kind of energy. But this kind of behavior has to be punished, and Bob Iger should be in prison, as well as the dozen people at the top of that company who are allowing this. But in the meantime, it's going to be amazing to watch woke Disney double down. The next movie under Marvel is going to be, I think, the Black Captain America movie, with the Red Hulk in it for like a couple minutes or something. And then I think they're also bringing in a bunch of the old Avengers to make sure that this movie really sells, because it's got, I think, Anthony Mackie is playing the role, and they don't want to have a black lead and have the movie either lose money or just like barely make a profit. So they're going to have to throw everything against the wall, which also means that they have to pay those people their salaries. So the movie is starting to get underwater right from the start, because like paying, who's the Iron Man guy? He got paid $65 million for that Civil War movie, which is crazy. But keep in mind he helped make them $1 billion. And then under Star Wars, it's going to be a Daisy Ridley continuation, where I'm assuming she's going to train a bunch of POC pronoun kids who will go fight the evil blonde men who are bringing back the patriarchy. And I said that just off the top of my head, right? And so when that movie comes out, like the elements of what I just said, she's going to train POC children, and the bad guys will be will look like me. Like, just keep that in mind when the movie comes out. You're like, holy shit, it actually happened. So Trump can put some pressure on them, but this needs to be settled legally. All these companies need to be sued into bankruptcy. And anyway, even Fed Post, even Bank of America came out with a tweet about how they don't discriminate against the right conservatives, except you can ask Radix Varun. He's got that YouTube channel, who was covering the Governor Whitmore kidnapping case, where the FBI was involved with some guys who were, kind of useful idiots, I guess. But it's like they wouldn't have done it unless the FBI was getting them to do it. And it's like one of the guys was homeless. It's like, well, none of it looks like a good case. It wasn't like, it was not something that would have happened but for the actions of the FBI. And so this girl, Radix, she got YouTube, she's all across social media, is covering it and interviewing it and interviewing the guys and breaking this thing down and talking about how corrupt the FBI is. So guess what happened to her? I don't know her real name. Well, Bank of America debanked her, and they've debanked a lot of other people. There's Laura Towler's T. I don't know if it was Bank of America or MasterCard, but this debanking has been going on for a long time. So tweets are great, but we got to have laws to prevent this. By law, you should have free speech. You should not be denied banking access without due process of the law, like everything else. So they have DEI departments run by these anti-white, racist Frankfurt School globalists, teaching the employees to focus all their hatred on European people. So these companies are funding these woke departments that actually costs the company more than the investment pays off. And if that sounds insane, it's because Disney doesn't care about money. Their main focus is this globalist hatred. People have a hard time accepting something that on the face of it sounds so crazy, because the motives are so different from what our motives would be. But, return on investment and maybe some artistic integrity. But after you see so many examples of their anti-white propaganda, whether it's behind the scenes in the corporate form or what they're producing in terms of movies, animations, and streaming shows, you'll see what we're dealing with. Globalist vermin that need to be starved out by the audience and sued into collapse by individuals and then gone after with the federal government to get some people some rights. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.